Okay, so we're going to take a look at questions 9 and 10 on the exponential functions homework. As I handed you guys this worksheet, what I told you is that you can definitely do the first 8 questions, but 9 and 10 might be a little bit more complicated. Okay, why are 9 and 10 a little bit more complicated? So this time we're working backwards. Usually I give you the function or the exponential equation, and then I ask you to make an input-output table and ultimately graph it on the grid that I give you. Okay, super easy if you're using a graphing calculator, okay? However, with number 9 and 10, it's basically the opposite. I'm giving you the graph first, and based on the graph that you see, you have to design the equation that meets this graph exactly. Okay, so let's look at number 10, and here's how I'll break this down. So you see this graph, and it definitely looks like exponential decay because it's getting smaller and smaller over time. We need to write an equation for it. But the first thing we notice is because it's exponential decay, it's definitely going to follow the format y is equal to a times b raised to the x power. Okay, that's huge. We have to recognize it. Because it's decay, we got to know that it's going to follow the format a times b raised to the x power. Okay, so here's our job. We got to figure out what a is and what b is. We can figure out what a and b is by looking at the points on this graph. Okay, so whenever I'm looking at this graph, my eyes are immediately drawn to like the easiest points to recognize. So the first point on this graph that my eyes go to is right here. We call this the y-intercept. Okay, so the first question I ask myself are, okay, what are the coordinates for that point right here? So the coordinates for this point, it's 0 units left and right, but 2 units up, 0, 2. Okay, we know that 0, 2 is one of the points on this graph. When I plug 0 in for x, it should spit out a 2. Okay, so we can use this first piece of information to solve for b. So watch how I do, or to solve for a rather. So watch how I do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this equation by plugging in this value for y and this value for x. Okay, so what I should have is I'll substitute, instead of writing y, I'm going to write 2. I still don't know what a is equal to. I still don't know what b is equal to. But for x, whenever I spit out a 2, I need to plug in a 0. Okay, so based on what I have here, I'm trying to solve for what a and b are equal to. Okay, but what do I know? If I see b to the 0 power, I know that anything raised to the 0 power is still going to spit out a 1. Okay, so what I can do is I can simplify the right side of this equation. B to the 0 power is equal to 1. So what's left after I adjust this? I'll just have a times 1 is equal to 2. Okay, and then what is a times 1? A times 1 is just equal to a. So just by looking at that equation and looking at the y-intercept, I was able to solve for a in this equation. A is going to be equal to 2. Okay, so I've gotten my first letter. Now I need to ultimately solve for b. Okay, and the way I solve for b is I look at any other point on this graph. Okay, so 0 is a super easy point to check. Let's think about 1. When we plug in 1 to this equation, what do we get back? So it looks like when we plug in 1, we get back a y value of also 1. This is my second magic point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plug these points, or this point for x and y, into that equation. But I also know what a is now too. I also know that a is equal to 2. Okay, so let's rewrite this equation with all of these pieces, this piece and this piece. So with this point, y is going to be equal to 1. A is equal to 2. I still don't know what b is equal to, but in this case, I'll plug in 1 for x. Okay, so I try to simplify this and solve for b. I got 2 times b raised to the first power. B to the first power is just plain old b. So when I simplify the right side, it's just 2 times b. This is still equal to 1. Now, my job now is to solve for b. 2 times b, how do I get rid of that 2 in front of the b? I have to divide both sides by 2. And then when I simplify or isolate b, I should get b is equal to, these guys cancel, b is equal to 1/2. Okay, so now I have my two pieces. A is equal to 2, b is equal to 1/2. I can rewrite my equation in this format. I'll now have y is equal to, a is equal to 2, in my parentheses, b is equal to 1/2, and I raise it to the x power. This is the equation that spits out this graph. Okay, same sort of principle with number 9, but what I will warn you about is that the numbers are a little bit nastier with this one. Okay, so here's what you need to know. This point right here is 0, 1/2, and then this point right here is 1, 2.5. Okay, if you have these two pieces of information, you have enough to be able to solve this exponential growth equation. It will follow this format.